A UN Human Rights Committee says it's received credible reports that China is holding 1 million members of a Muslim ethnic minority in what's described as a massive internment camp. In total, it's estimated another 2 million Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities have been forced into political camps for indoctrination. The government in Beijing accuses the Uyghur Muslim minority of posing a serious military threat to the country and of stirring up tensions in the western region of Xinjiang. A report by Chinese human rights activists alleges 21% of all arrests recorded in the country last year happened in Xinjiang. Aydin Anwar is in the studio with me. She is a Uyghur-American activist who's studying international comparative studies and global health at Duke University in the United States. Thank you very much indeed for coming into the studio. Human rights groups, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, have presented these findings to the United Nations Committee that is going to now discuss it in more detail. So we're only hearing about this now, but how long has the Uyghur community known about these camps?
Well, these camps have been in existence since starting early 2017. Some were built in 2016, but people have been detained in these camps some people have been detained for over a year, some for several months. They haven't been released. And right now the UN is finally making a statement. So,
dictatorships in the past have called these kind of camps. They've been used for re-education.
Right.
The findings here say indoctrination, and some of the details are quite incredible. Apart from how these people are being treated in these camps, being poorly fed, and reports of torture, the fact that they have to shout Communist Party slogans, that they have to express their loyalty to the government in Beijing. This is absolutely amazing. What more do you know about what's happening in these places?
So essentially what's happening in these camps is the Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslims who are in these camps are being forced to denounce Islam, adopt atheism, and pledge allegiance to the Chinese state. So they're in crowded cells, being forced to chant phrases like religion is dangerous, all hail Xi Jinping, and they're in these closed facilities, and if they disobey, they're being tortured. So there's one report that talked about how the inmates would be forced to stand against the wall for 4 hours. If they disobeyed, they'd be sent to solitary confinement, not fed properly, and a lot of people have attempted suicide but have failed to do so and are threatened if they were to do something like that again. And they also have no contact with the outside world. Their children, a lot of these children, the children of these detainees are being sent to orphanages, mainly in mainland China, where they are obviously separated from their parents, and they're also being forcibly assimilated into the Chinese state by being told to hate their own religion and their Uyghur identity and adopt ethnic Han culture.
There have been many incidents that have been reported of violence in that part of China, in Xinjiang, which the Chinese government mostly says are acts of terrorism, specifically carried out by the Uyghurs. What do the Uyghurs say about that?
So a lot of this is in response to the occupation that took place in 1949 when Communist China came to power. And so that's often what's missing out of the narrative. But China has used these terrorist attacks and this so-called crackdown on Islamic extremism to justify its actions. And it's essentially trying to wipe out the Uyghur population at this point, because the land belongs to us. And right now China has wants to tightly control that land because it's so rich in minerals and resources. And so this whole so-called global war on terror has been used to basically completely ban Islam in East Turkestan. Right now, even saying Assalamu alaikum is forbidden, which is a Muslim greeting that people make. Even saying the word God is forbidden. You have to replace it with the term Xi Jinping. To say, like, for example, God willing, you have to say party willing or Xi Jinping willing. So it's come to that point. And just showing a slight, and these people are being sentenced to like massive prison terms. Even one lady was sentenced to 10 years of prison for promoting the wearing of headscarves, for example. And this is just one of countless examples.
Possibly one reason that China might be able to, if I can use the phrase, get away with it, because the Chinese government says these camps don't exist.
Right.
But there's this evidence now that they do exist.
Right.
But it's a very underreported part of the world.
Right.
So the Chinese are not being scrutinized possibly as much as they should have been in the past. Right. But do you really expect anything to change? Whatever the United Nations does, how can they stop China doing what it wants to do in its own territory?
Well, in the beginning, the reason why the world wasn't aware of what's happening is mainly because of Chinese media censorship. The world in general was ignorant, but now that I guess the West, particularly, are starting to wake up, and also the world, we see the West actually kind of speaking up against it. But we also see this disproportionate coverage. Like the Muslim world has been essentially silent on this issue. And the UN right now has a job to step in before what we see as a genocide actually takes place. We talk about things like never again. We say it's never again going to happen for the previous genocides that we've seen. But what we're saying right now is it's happening now, and something needs to happen at this moment. UN needs to step in and end this mass concentration camps and free and reunite these families.
Aiden, we'll really appreciate, as I said, you coming into the studio here at TRT World. Thanks a lot.